When you're going to San Fran Freak Show, be sure to check out Bawdy Storytelling at the Verdi Club. I'm so excited that you're having Dossie Easton.
Oh my
I
God,
love
me too.
her.
I love her too.
She was the reason that I started Sexploration with Monika, is because I read her book, The Ethical Slut, and then also this book about Tantra. And I was like, oh my God, the dominant culture paradigm isn't giving us all the information that we really need to be like empowered, pleasured adults. And so then I'm like, okay, that's my mission in life. Great.
I love it. I love it. I love that she inspired you to do this. I'm going to text her and tell her, guess what I just heard today?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you hosted her party, and I got to tell that story.
Yeah, yes, you got to tell the story about how she inspired you.
Yes.
That was for Dossie's 75th birthday.
Right.
And Dossie kept asking me, she goes, for my birthday, which is this other big thing, I really want it to be a bawdy storytelling. And I was trying to tour or something. I was crazy at the moment. I'm like, Dossie, I can't. I have so much going on. And then she just kept coming back. Right. I'm so glad she did. She was just like, say yes. I don't bother people. I don't annoy, but say yes already. And I'm like, and she said, it is not only the anniversary, my 75th birthday anniversary, it is also the 50th anniversary of the LSD trip that led to me realizing I was an autonomous human being who controlled my own destiny, which led to the book, The Ethical Slut. And I'm like, well, then I'm fucking doing that event. I didn't know both those things.
Happened at the same time.
Same date, yeah.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's literally a trip.
That's literally a trip.
Yay, that makes me so happy. I've had, her and Janet on the show, and they're just such wild and inspirational people. And yeah, I'm so grateful.
For those who don't know, Janet Hardy is the co-author, the other author of The Ethical Slut, and many, many more books about BDSM and
radical.
Yes.
And Radical Ecstasy. That book really changed my life.
They are working on a new version right now.
So
we're going to have a new copy soon.
Yeah. So I'm really wanting to hear about like what you learned while you were on tour, because I know that was bananas every day, finding new story, like coaching people how to tell a story, from around the country. That must have been a huge challenge.
So people are not going to know that I was on tour. So should I explain that part? Sure. Okay. It's not happening this year, although I am working right now on booking my next tour. Yes, probably in the fall. So last year, I was just like, I want to take the show out to new cities, and I want to hear stories from other cities. And I was trying to figure out how to make it work. It's impossible to take.
Challenge.
Yeah, you can't take all your performers with you unless you have corporate sponsorship in the millions of dollars.
And a huge bus.
And a huge bus, yeah. So I took a minivan and I drove cross country, and I drove 10,000 miles. And I drove from San Francisco and then drove all the way across country. By the way, negative 14 degrees in Missouri, and the heat, everything went out on my car. It would continue to drive, but no heat. I thought I had frostbite.
That sounds bad.
And then I did Baltimore, Maryland, New York City, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Boston, and a bunch of other cities, and just drove from one to the next one, all totally scattered. Depending on the date the venue would give me, I guess I'm going back that way.
Go back.
Yeah. Often I'm like, been on this freeway. I'm going to get back on and go to Boston now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was and what did you learn in that experience? Having like new storytellers, like having to coach different people, like, is there some grain of truth that you were able to, I can just, help people learn how to tell a good story quickly by giving them this piece of information? Was there any kind of golden nugget like that?
I knew something I already knew, which is San Francisco is a special starfish. And our stories, people are like, wow. And you're like, okay, let's put that on stage. But in other cities, they're like, my boss might know I've had sex. I'm like, I'm pretty sure your boss knows you had sex. Like, you're a grown person. But there were a lot of people who are a lot more reserved about talking about sex. I suspected that, but it was confirmed at every single show.
Yeah.
People took a lot of coaching to go, am I allowed to say that? Am I allowed to cuss on stage? You are.
Right.
You can say butthole if you want. I'm fine with it. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of realizing how repressed a lot of cities are compared to us. We knew that,
Right.
but it was confirmed in every city.
Right.
A lot of people falling out at the last minute because they're like, storytelling is hard. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it is. It's not just, I did this one thing. Ta-da!
Right.
Like, what
And
do
they're
I-
worried about it will go down on my permanent record.
Yeah, that too. But they want to just say, one time I did this crazy thing. And I'm like, what's that story about? And they go, what do you mean what's about? I'm like, I understand the content,
Right.
but why does the audience care?
Right.
What are they learning about themselves?
Ooh.
What you can't just go, so that happened, which a lot of people want to do at the end of a story.
Right.
And that happened. Goodbye. Nope. It's got to be
Right.
about something.
Well,
And it's got to be about the audience learning more
Something
about
about them.
themselves. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's what we want to know about is we want to know ourselves better through the reflection of other people's stories.
That's what storytelling does. Yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of
Oh.
people believe because storytelling has been co-opted by storytelling is songwriting, storytelling is cinematography, storytelling
Right.
is writing books, or all of those things are storytelling. So if you say that, they're just like, oh yeah, I know what that is. And then they start talking, you're going, that's not the part we're talking about. We're talking about storytelling with a universal theme.
Right.
What's your story really about? What do I learn about myself? And how do I become a better person because of your story?
Yeah, and like kind of the arc. Like, what are the challenges
Mhm.
that you went through? What are the things that you had to learn? Kind of they have like a storytelling arc, like kind of a medieval.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, like how to put your story, like what's the word? Uh, on the mount storytelling. And within the Greek stories and the Greek gods, and they kind of have this arc of history where they like tell their woes and their challenges and their vision, and then what they came away from it with.
Well, most people, if you've
Archimedes.
ever been to like a moth storytelling event, I sit there and I play this mental bingo game with myself, going, how many stories about climbing Everest am I going to hear tonight? I wonder if it's because they've looked at a story arc and they're like, when I think story, I think, that's a story arc. And they're just like, so one time I decided I was going to climb Mount Tamalpais. And you're just like, it makes people think of mountains all the time. And
Right.
sometimes I just sit there in the audience at the Moth in LA and I'm just going, that was 3 stories about climbing a mountain that had nothing to do with anything. They just think about mountains when they think about a story arc.
Interesting.
We don't do that at Bawdy Storytelling. There's no climbing mountains at Bawdy Storytelling. The arc is the
Sexapades.
climax of the story. Is there a
Yeah.
climax?
Yeah. Well, and people have both joys and challenges, and sometimes really hilarious things happen, and sometimes it's like traumatic, or people have to work through something. I mean, there's a lot of different. I loved Reed Mihalko's story when he was just very new. He had just come to San Francisco, and he was on Bawdy Storytelling, and I saw like an old Bawdy Storytelling about him telling this story of going to his first like I think he was like learning about swinging.
The
the
hedonism
first
story.
time. Like he
Yeah.
was, yes.
Mhm.
Like he was all like a sex positive feminist. And then he was like, oh, like intersecting with the swinging world.
Yeah.
And like how to navigate
And
that.
translating.
Right.
Like they would say this, and I was like, oh, in my world, in polyamory, that would be this. And so
Right.
translating for the audience and explaining what you would see. I mean, a good story tells you like it tells you what you're looking at. It tells you the environment. It tells you what the room looks like. It tells you about the beach,
Right.
you're in Jamaica, all that kind of stuff, all of those things. So we get to be on a swinger trip to hedonism and then get to see him navigate this couple who were picking him up at a swinger or not a convention, but a swinger event. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wasn't it at Hedonism Resort?
Sounds
Something
right.
like that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Monika, that was like 17 years ago.
Well, it's because I interviewed Hedo Nancy, and she did some like a film festival and like all these things, but she talked about her show and her producing of this film festival on my show, and so that's how I know about the hedonism events. And I've always been like, oh, that sounds very,
doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. And I have been to Jamaica, but not at a hedonism. I haven't been to the Hedo Resort.
Me either.
Like that sounds.
But I feel like I was there because Reed tells a great story.
Yes, he really does.
And if you want to see Reed's stories, if you go to Read About Sex, there's a whole section. He's recorded so many of the stories that he told at Bawdy. So you can see, 50 stories that Reed told on my stage. He's told a lot of stories on my stage.
He's so funny, and I really think that he's hilarious. And I want to talk about like what you learned about sex from people's storytellings. Did you come up with any new like, oh, that's a different way to think about that? Or
are you talking about the tour, or are you talking about life in general doing the show?
Life in, because you've been doing the show for so long.
Almost 20 years. Yeah. I learned something at every show. Yeah. I coach every story, which means I get to ask all these questions of them. Yeah. And sometimes I'm just like, to make it a better story, let's do this. But truthfully, I just want to know. I just want to learn lots of stuff. For example, a couple of years ago during the pandemic, I mentioned on the Bawdy Storytelling podcast that there were some stories I'd particularly like to have. Every once in a while, I put out a list of, here's a story that I never get pitched and I'd like to have, which is a call out to people who are just like, really? I didn't think I have a story. Right. One of the things, you want to know the one that I am still trying to get, that every time I post that I'm looking for it, 5 years later, people go, you posted at one point that you were looking for a story about CFNM, clothed female, nude male. Did you ever get it? Oh my God. Was it going to be at this show? I want to see it. Oh, I'm like, sounds like it might be your thing. And they're like, no, I'm not going to tell a story. I'm not going to tell a story. But if it were there, I would totally watch it. Like, I still get people going, are you going to have a CFNM story? Right. But a couple of years ago during the pandemic, I mentioned in the podcast that one of the stories that I would like to have was an ABDL story. So many letters.
What does ABDL mean?
Thank you for setting me up for that. The answer is adult baby diaper lover. Oh. And so, right? And I was just like, nobody's ever pitched me that story. I'd love to learn more about that. And I think people learn so well through story. Right. It's not you're at a party and they're going, let's do it. It's just like, I'm going to talk about some stuff and you're going to learn. Right. Yeah. And so somebody in the Midwest responded and said, I don't know that I have any story whatsoever, but you said that was something you were interested in, and I am into ABDL, and I don't have a story, but I'm just answering yours. And I said, well, let's get on Zoom and let's talk about it. And I get on Zoom, and this often happens. People are like, I don't know that I have a story,
and you pick it out of them.
Oh, I pull it out. Yes. I ask lots of very pointed, personal, rude questions. Let's go there. And they're like, wow, okay. And the story ended up being that he was so ashamed of being into ABDL. He got into such detail about his favorite kind of diapers and the difference between them. And these are cushy soft and these make crinkly noises. And I'm like, I'm learning a lot,
And different kinds of diaper to appreciate.
Yeah, right? It's not anything I've ever had anybody talk to me about.
No.
Yeah. And so he is just kind of like, it's not really a story. So I'm like, so how did you start, talking to people about that? How did you become, obviously you're okay with it now. It feels different. He thought he had no story. And the story that he ended up telling was that he decided to go to a munch. He was sitting there in a group full of people. was sitting next to a female identified person. At one point, somebody let slip the word diaper, and the other one was like, "You're into diapers? I'm into diapers." And they started talking and started nerding out. "Oh my God, have you tried fluffies? They're great. Have you? Oh my God, there's better. They're way better than yours. You like what? Mine are better." That kind of stuff. They ended up falling in love at a munch. They ended up getting married in front of everybody, and they had a gazebo outdoors. And the most exciting thing to both of them was that underneath their wedding clothes, they could hear the crinkling of the diapers. Isn't that sweet?
The diapers.
I loved it. I was like, "Oh my God, you thought you didn't have a story."
Sweet. Well, and it's funny that we have this in common, that we've both been doing our shows for almost 20 years. How are we going to celebrate?
I don't know, but have you thought about it? Have you thought about what you want to do?
I'm looking for ideas.
When is your 20th anniversary?
It's let's see.
What month?
April.
Next April?
Next April.
Okay. So April 2026 will be your 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
Let's ask your listeners.
Have a party? Yes. So if you have any ideas, or you can suggest some venues, or, even like, do I throw a party? I've done those bondage dinners.
Yeah.
And had a great time.
Those were so fun. I love those events. Well, I highly recommend my venue, the Verdi Club. I've been there at least 15, 16 years, and they let me do some weird shit.
Oh.
I love that about them. When I say, they go, "What are we doing tonight?" And I'll go, "I had this idea, and here it is." And they're like, "Okay." And they let me. And I'm like, I'm not sure that I would say yes to that if I were running a venue and you suggested that. But you never know what you're going to have at an event. You're just kind of like, what's going to be happening? Uh-oh, Dixie had an idea and she's just going to run with it. And which is like Dossie's story. Dossie's story is like, we've never done it before.
Right.
I like trying things in the moment and then going, now I know that. Yeah. Maybe it's not perfect, but it's the excitement of making something happen with people. And then they kind of feed into the energy, and all of a sudden they're just like, it just riffs. People start riffing off ideas. That might happen for you.
Right. And what I love about Dossie Easton is she is such a master at taking the spiritual and the sexual and, like, especially radical ecstasy, where it's both BDSM and Tantra, and then kind of this beautiful, and it's all about being present in the moment, in this moment.
Yeah.
So I'm so looking forward to her, remix of it.
She's been telling me some of the new chapters that she's adding to it. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to ruin it, but it's just like, whoa. And she goes, "I don't think that's out there anywhere. I've never heard anybody talk about that." And I'm like, me either. So she's creating something brand new out of a book that came out. What year did Radical Ecstasy come out? At least 10 or 15 years ago. At least.
Maybe even 15.
Yeah.
Because I read it a long time ago. And then, I interviewed both her and, I'm saying
Janet?
their real name. Yes.
Uh-huh.
And, and they, both have such interesting stories around, their side. Because, Janet's more of a top. And Dossie's more of a bottom, but they definitely interplay together so well. And they, write together majestically. So, I'm just really curious to see what their new stories are. And the bottoming book and the topping book. And, yeah, all of that.
When I did the 75th birthday party for Dossie, she gave me this special package that had every book she's ever written with an inscription inside and a copy of this poem that she wrote called "Hold Me Down So I Can Fly," and inscribed it to me and everything like that. And I was just like, it's really beautiful. Yeah. It's about kink. And it's just like, when the house is on fire, those are the things I'm going to grab on my way out. The 3 things you grab when your house is on fire.
And metaphorically even too, like, what's the most precious things to you, right? And some of it is can only be captured in this moment. That really gave me chills. What are the things that you would, that what are the precious things to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love her work. Yeah, I'm really hoping to. I mean, I know that you can't spoil like any of the stories that they're working on or telling. Do you have other people in the show that you're working with?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Tell me some of the other storytellers that
You're not going to recognize their fake names,
really?
but sure.
Okay.
It's a story about sex. People often perform under fake names. So a lot of times people who's performing in the show, well, Elvis Presley and Dolly Parton are there and they're like, what, really? No, not really. You're not going to recognize any of the names because
they want to be private.
They want to be private. The story is true, but the names can be fake. So often the names in the story are fake. Sometimes they perform under fake names, but it's a true story.
Right.
So therefore, they want to feel like they can include all the great details.
Well,
so, yeah.
The gory, tragic, beautiful, enlightening, all the nitty gritty,
dirty details. The dirty, dirty details. Yeah. I have somebody who I've had in the show before who is a gay leather daddy who tells filthy stories with heart. I love a filthy story with heart. Like it goes there, and then you're just like, oh my God, oh. So it just makes you feel something. It's not just not raunch for raunch's sake. I hate the word raunch.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love some of the connotations of dirty. Like, I also love like actual dirt. Like, I love playing in the dirt. I love eating dirty. But then, to be honest, like when I'm doing actual sex play with with myself or others, I usually I'm I'm just a good girl. Like I'm so good.
I am not.
I am not.
I am the exact opposite, Monika.
That's so, but there's kind of a switch where it like what feels like yummy to you is to be naughty, and to me, like I'm so good. It's kind of like the Mae West. I'm so good, I'm bad. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Well, for those who don't know the word bawdy storytelling, Mae West, the fact that she was called a bawdy broad was the inspiration for me. When I was a kid, I used to watch her double entendres and go, pretty sure that was filthy. Yeah. But I'm not sure. And I always loved the way she skirted that line.
Right.
So Mae West was one of my earliest inspirations. So that when I decided to do this show, somebody said, all right, what's it going to be called? I'm like, bawdy storytelling, because bawdy to me is a word that 30-year-olds do not know, but it is, a word that means off color and risque and blue, as in blue comedy and all those kind of things. So a lot of people don't recognize the word because it's from Mae West, Bette Midler. They were inspirations.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything that you want to impart to the listeners at home about where to find you, or what to explore maybe in their own real life, in their bedroom life?
Tell them what to explore in their bedroom life? Well, Monika would like you to get into some dirt. She likes dirt. I will not be asking you to play in the dirt.
I also like clean.
Well, you're like,
and good.
You're like, tell them what they should be doing in the bedroom, and I'm like, Monika would like you to play in dirt.
I'm just requesting, like I love information. Like that's actually why I started the show, is because I'm wanting all the stories and all the information. And like, I've learned so much doing Sexploration with Monika about, sex magic.
Yeah.
There's people who do sex magic. And
I
it
know.
works for them.
I know.
It's magical.
It's so magic. It's magical.
Yeah. So that's what and then for the at-home people, like, what do you want to explore? What do you want to do? And, what does your sexuality bring to you? And do you see it as dirty, or do you see it as, how I see it. Well, like, I'm such a good girl. I'm willing to do some very like, oh la la things.
I will not be saying oh la la in my description of what I'm into. Ooh la la.
You are like your De La Tour, so it seems like you're a little bit oh la la.
Yeah, no.
Not even a tiny skosh.
Not a skosh, no.
Where's a De La Tour from?
New Orleans.
Oh,
you know.
I see.
You know.
That's right.
But not ooh la la, France. It's not from France. I would say when it comes to telling people, if I were to tell people how to tell a better story, I would say number one rule is details make the story.
Yeah.
Most people are like, one time I was at this place and some stuff happened. I was with this person and then
yeah, you need more details.
And I'm like, yeah, what? Like,
right.
I didn't get any of that. And
right.
they're like, but that story was all about sex. And I'm like, in your head, it was about sex. Out here, there was nothing.
Right.
You were trying to protect identities. You were being confidential.
Right.
And if you don't give them anything, they can't go anywhere.
Right.
You were taking them on a trip in their head.
Right.
You know, they want to see what you see. They want to feel what you feel.
Right.
They want to.
The sensations.
They want to arrive at a feeling and new information about themselves. So you have to give them details for that. So a lot of my coaching is just them going person, place, thing. And I'm like, okay. And then I break it down and go, so there was a person. What was their name? Well, I'm not going to say their name because I want to mean, you don't have to say, but for now, let's give them a name.
Like even a nom de plume.
Yes. Yes. But for starters, don't start, you know, it's like, get in there. Let's get in there on the truth. Before we put it on stage, we can figure out what we want to change. You can change your name on stage, but right now let's get into the truth. Right. Because the truth will make them
like
go.
A kernel of like juicy goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you want the authentic story.
Yes.
Too. Like
yes.
You want to feel someone's authenticity as they're telling the story.
And if they're hiding things, if they're not including any details, the audience is just like, yeah, I don't really have a reaction to that story. So I make them get all the way in there and ask a lot of rude questions. And they're just like, people want to know that? I'm like, people want to know that so hard. Yeah. They definitely want to know that. Yeah. And then they're like, okay, apparently she's a sexual folklorist. She knows what she's talking about. So I guess I'm just going to do it because Dixie told me to do it. Right. And the story is so much better if they put everything in, everything they're comfortable. I teach people, I want you to think about what you're comfortable talking about on stage. Because if you do all that thinking in advance, when you get up there, you can have fun with it. You know exactly your beginning, middle, and end. You've known that this is something that's essential to the story, and I've told you should include it. So when you get up there, it feels like the truth because it is the truth. So, yeah. It takes coaching to make people realize, let's get beyond the whole confidentiality thing and let's tell a true story, and then we protect people before we put it on stage. But in discovering the story, there's a lot of like, let's dig in. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Sexploration with Monika. Tell us the dates of the show at the Verdi Club so people can get into it and buy tickets.
Yeah, tickets are selling really fast for this one because Dossie Easton is in it. The date is Friday, July 18th. It is at the Verdi Club on Mariposa Street in San Francisco, which is a big, beautiful Italian-American dinner club. It's gorgeous. And we've sold out the last, I don't know how many shows we've done. So hopefully we'll do it again.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Sexploration with Monika.
Thanks for having me, Monika. It's so great to hang out with you again.
Really. Hey, my vagina is 8 miles wide. Absolutely everyone can come inside. If you're ever frightened, just run and hide. My vagina is 8 miles wide. Tell me, what is womanly to you? Strong but not too much of a brute. It's cool if she's powerful, but way better if she's cute.